Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I'm going to be sharing my reading wrap up for the month of May. I'm going to kick off today as always with my stats for the month, and then I'm going to take you through the books that I read. So in total I read 16 books, which came to 5,527 pages. And that averaged out at 178 pages per day, so slightly higher than my normal average. It was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the star rating, and I had 2 3 stars, 10 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars and 2 5-star reads as well. In terms of how I read them, I had 3 ARCs last month, 1 audiobook, 5 ebooks, 6 Kindle Unlimited and 1 physical book. And then in terms of the subgenres, I read 2 contemporary romances, 1 dark, 1 dystopian, 1 historical, 9 mafia and 2 paranormal romances. Normally I go through the books I've read chronologically, so in the order in which I read them throughout the month. But today I thought I'd do something slightly different, and I actually thought I'd go from my lowest star reads up to my favourite reads for the month. So in essence, not only am I giving you my May reading wrap up, but I'm also doing a ranking video here as well. So let me know in the comments if you like this style of video, you want me to do it like this in the future, or if you want me to carry on with the chronological view of how I read the books. So kicking off then with my least favourite for the month, which was actually a short story, just 62 pages, and that was Maximus by Stella Andrews. Now, like I said, this was just a short story. I read it as part of the Mafia Romance Readathon that took place at the beginning of May, and this was part of the Vegas Mafia series from Stella Andrews. It's an Italian mafia romance, and it was an arranged marriage but a hidden identity, and also a one-night stand as well. Now, one of the reasons this is the lowest rated book for the month, in fact I rated this one 3 stars and gave it 2.5 on the spy scale, was mainly because of the fact that it was a short story, because I don't think that the author had enough time to really develop these characters, and also I didn't really get why they would want to be together after their night together. I don't think that their kind of connection really came through in the story. But essentially this one is following Maximus and Sierra. These two are actually arranged in marriage, but they've never met each other, and they both go to Las Vegas to kind of have their bachelorette sort of parties before they are due to get married, and they're due to get married the following morning. And while they're in Vegas, they happen to meet each other and spend the night together, and of course they don't know who each other is until the following day when Sierra is walking down the aisle, and obviously that is when they come eye to eye, as it were, and realise that the person they slept together with the night before is in fact the person that they are arranged in marriage to. Okay, another 3-star read, and it was 3 on the spy scale, was another book that I read as part of the Mafia Romance Read-Along, and this was Owned by the Cartel by Nikki. Now this one was actually a novella, so about 120 pages long, and it was book 1 in the Narco Vows series. So this was actually a cartel mafia romance between Valentin and Ariel. This one was an age gap captive situation, and also a repaying a debt situation as well, because this was a story that we've seen and read many times before, and that is that a family member of Ariel, in fact it was her ex-husband, who has now passed away and left her as a single mum. Now Valentin has basically turned up at her home to get her to repay this debt, and of course she doesn't have anything to give him, so he decides he's going to take her and her child back to his compound, and then he's going to hold her there until he can decide what he's actually going to do with her and how she's going to be able to repay this debt. And of course this is going to be the romance between that couple. I didn't have any 3.5-star reads in the month of May, so the next book was a 4-star read, but I would say when I kind of lined them up against each other, this was my least favourite of the 4-star reads that I had, and this is Absolute Silence by Jill Ramsower, and this is book 5 in the 5 Families series. So this is an Italian mafia romance. It also has BDSM elements to this one. It takes place in a sex club. The heroine in particular has got some PTSD. She's suffering from some past trauma, and this couple enter into a sex deal. We were following Camilla and Philip. Now this one was actually a recommendation that I pulled from the jar last month, so this was part of my TBR for the month of May, and I'd never read anything by Jill Ramsower before. I really wanted to. I own a couple of her books that I got from Mystic Box, and so I was intrigued to read this one. Now, this was book 5 in a series, and I hadn't read any of the other books in this series either, and so maybe therefore this kind of coloured how I kind of thought about this particular book. But like I said, this one does mainly take place or revolve around a sex club with Camilla and Philip. So Camilla has definitely got some trauma in her past. We don't know what it is to start off with, we find out later in the book, but as a result she has got some sexual fantasies that she wants to kind of explore and act out. Therefore she decides that she's going to go to a sex club, and she researches the sex club that she wants to join, and she ends up joining a sex club called the Lion's Den. Now, on her first night there, when she's kind of being showed around by the owner, she happens to run into Philip. And this is her worst case scenario, because then we find out that Camilla is actually a mafia princess, and she knows Philip, and he's also part of the mafia. And so she starts to panic a little bit, because she knows that if Philip tells her dad that she's there, then she will be in a lot of trouble and will probably not be allowed out again. And so Philip and her enter into this deal where he promises not to tell anyone that he knows that she's going there, as long as the only person that she kind of explores her fantasies with is with him. And so she very begrudgingly agrees to this deal, and of course now they enter into a bit of a sex deal between them, where he is going to be her dominant and she is going to be his submissive. Like I said, I did rate this 4 stars, and it was 3.5 on the spy scale. However, since it was actually set in a sex club and the theme was very much around BDSM for healing, it wasn't actually that spicy. So this book wasn't particularly spicy when you think about the context and the setting of this book. Also, I didn't think the dynamic between them was particularly compelling or really believable. Philip really set out to say that he wanted to be a dominant and she was going to be a submissive, but actually quite a lot of their sex scenes that we had with them ended up being fairly vanilla, and there wasn't really a lot of depth to the scenarios that they found themselves in. Plus, this couple also spent quite a lot of time apart during this book, because Philip was kind of like feeling a bit guilty. He was trying to stay away, he was trying to convince her not to go back to the sex club, and really was keeping her on a bit of a tight leash from that perspective. And so it was kind of frustrating, because they're either in a sex deal or they're not, and he kind of really didn't want to take things further with her, at least to start off with. And so overall, I did enjoy the read. I did enjoy this author's writing style, and definitely will read more from the author, but I just felt that some of the elements of this book fell a little bit flat, and therefore was, like I say, my least favourite 4-star read that I read last month. Next up then, I've got The Sexpert by J.A. Huss and Johnathan McClain, and this is book 1 in the Tall, Dark and Handsome series. This is a contemporary kind of light-hearted billionaire romance. It's close proximity and also hidden identity as well, and we were following Eden and Andrew. So like I said, this one was another 4-star read, and it was 2 on the spy scale, which is quite surprising since this book is actually called The Sexpert, and so you thought going in that this would have at least a little bit of spice in it, but the spice was really, really limited. Instead, it was kind of more of a kind of a rom-com sort of vibe, and essentially what we've got is our main heroine, Eden. She has started a YouTube channel, and it's called The Sexpert. You never see her face, but you see some of her other attributes, and she creates videos that give people advice about sex. Now, this is a bit of a side hustle that she does with her best friend, and as her day job, she actually works in PR for this men's magazine company. Now, at the very start of this book, our heroine meets our hero, Andrew, when they are stuck in a traffic jam together because there is a cow that is giving birth on the motorway, and so they're kind of stuck in this traffic jam for quite a while, and he's on the phone, but his phone is running out of battery, and so he leans across, opens the window and asks to borrow a phone charger. She's very reluctant to lend him one, because she's like, well, I'll give it to you, I'm not going to get it back, and he promises that he's going to return it. But then of course the traffic starts moving again, and he does in fact drive off, and she is now down a mobile phone charging cable. Except their paths are going to cross again, because it turns out that Andrew is a billionaire, and he is best friends with the person who owns this male magazine. He's new in town, he's actually going to set up office below his best friend so they can kind of work in the same building together. And he has earned his billions because he has developed this app, which is a voice simulator app and basically enables people to change their voice. Lo and behold, we'll find out that the voice that she uses to create her Sexpert videos is through his app. So basically she modifies her voice slightly. So like I say, she doesn't show her face. She also modifies her voice slightly because she doesn't want anyone in her real life to figure out that she is in fact the Sexpert on YouTube. Simultaneously with him arriving in town and then being in the traffic jam, their YouTube channel goes completely viral, and then her boss hears about this and then he becomes livid because he had an idea for his magazine, and it was going to be a kind of special feature in the magazine which was going to be the Sexpert, and he now thinks someone has stolen his idea and he's in all a rage about it, and he wants to stop at nothing until he finds out who did this. Of course, Andrew and Eden are going to kind of keep bumping into each other, then they're going to start dating and start a romantic liaison with each other. All the while, Andrew's best friend is trying to figure out who the Sexpert is, and Andrew's starting to twig on that maybe it's his new girlfriend, Eden. But there's loads of funny moments in this, and even though she's the Sexpert and she's doing these videos, she's actually not that experienced, and there's a few comical scenes in the bedroom. It's the only kind of scenes that we get with them, which end up being closed door, but they kind of lead up to the sex scenes, are very comical, which leads Andrew to think actually she probably isn't the Sexpert because she doesn't seem to know too much about what she's doing. And of course you can imagine how the rest of the book goes from there and what the third act conflict might be. So overall this was a really funny kind of rom-com-y sort of romance, not the sort of thing that I would normally read, but I did enjoy this one, and incidentally this was another one that I pulled from my recommendation jar that someone had recommended to me as well. Next up, another mafia romance that I rated 4 stars, and this was Once Burned by Sam Mariano, and this is book 3 in her Morelli family series, which is more of a mafia saga. So far I've only read 3 books in this series. I am slowly working my way through this series, and it's following the Morelli family, who is an Italian mafia family. Now this particular one is an age gap romance, close proximity, friends to lovers, virgin heroine and a scarred hero, and we were following Adrian and Elise. And Adrian is the best friend to Matteo Morelli, who is kind of the head of the family, and Elise is a young woman who works in his household. And since he first kind of rescued Elise and brought her to his house to work in the house kind of as a maid, Adrian has been very protective of her. As a young girl he was very protective of her. It was purely platonic. They became very good friends, and then as she grew older and turned into a woman, he then started to become very attracted to her and wanted to be with her. Now, due to events in some of the other books, Adrian actually is serving a sort of a sentence, if you like, with Matteo, because he doesn't want to be part of the mafia family anymore. And Matteo, although they were kind of best friends growing up and he's his right-hand man, there's also a little bit of animosity between them, particularly on Adrian's side. But he's promised Matteo that he will continue to work for him for 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years he wants his freedom, and he also wants to free Elise as well. And so at the start of this book the 5 years are up and he is now free to leave the family and also to take Elise with him. But of course Elise is happy to go. She likes Adrian, in fact she's quite attracted to Adrian herself, but she's also a little bit miffed to be leaving the Morelli household because she actually likes working there, and that's where what her whole identity is. And so her and Adrian's conflict really is Adrian being very frustrated that Elise doesn't seem to be that grateful that he's kind of rescued her, but she genuinely doesn't know what to do with her newfound freedom. Of course it's not going to last too long because Matteo is in danger. Someone's not only threatened his life but also the life of his new girlfriend, and so Adrian decides that he's going to come back just to basically find out who the perpetrator is and to protect Matteo. And of course things are going to happen. Matteo is very manipulative, and ultimately Adrian is going to end up returning to the family and staying. So I'm not going to say too much more about this because, like I said, this is a saga. I'm sure many more things will happen. We have had some reveals and some things that have gone down in this particular story. And while I will say Adrian and Elise do get a happy ever after, I very much feel it's a happy for now for this couple, because I have no idea what's going to happen in the future, and Adrian might not be as safe as he thinks he is. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. Next up, another mafia romance was Don't Tease Me by Renee Rose, and this is book 1 in her Made Men series. This one was actually a Cosa Nostra mafia romance. It was an age gap BDSM romance where the main couple actually enter into a sex deal. We were following Lexi and Bobby. Now this was another 4-star read, and it was 4 on the spice scale as well, just because of the nature of the book. Now this was a fairly shortish read. Renee Rose tends to write books between the 200 and 300 page mark, so they're always really fun to read, fast paced, and I really kind of like her mafia worlds. I really like her writing style, really easy to read. Now she really kind of captured my attention with the prologue for this story, because right at the start of this book we get a kind of a glimpse into the future, which leaves me really wanting more, because Lexi is kind of taken in by the FBI and asked what she knows about Bobby, and I was very intrigued to find out, one, what got her into this situation where the FBI would pick her up, and 2, whether or not she would say anything about Bobby or not. And 3, I had it in the back of my mind that maybe this was a test on Bobby's side to see if she would actually squeal on him or not, just to test her loyalty. And so I was really kind of like really intrigued to figure out how we actually ended up in the scenario we did in this particular prologue. So that really kept my attention really until the end of this book. Now what happens at the start of this book is that Lexi is really desperate for money, because she is a hairdresser. She rents kind of a chair in this hair salon, but she's really struggling not only to pay for the space in the hair salon but also her rent as well, because a few months prior she was actually involved in a car accident. She had quite a lot of medical bills she needed to pay, and she was off work for a couple of months while she recovered, and so she's found herself in quite a lot of debt, and she's really struggling to kind of catch up. Now one of her really good friends works in a bar that's owned by the mafia, and she knows that Bobby is currently looking for a new woman, because Bobby is older. He's actually got twin daughters, but he likes the BDSM lifestyle, and in particular he really likes to keep his women, so he's a bit of a sugar daddy. So her friend says to her, hey, I can introduce you to Bobby. He is looking for somebody that he can kind of look after and spoil, and I think he'll really like you. And so Lexi agrees, and she's introduced to Bobby, and Bobby is taken with her straight away, and basically he is only too keen to set her up in his kind of an apartment that he pays for. He buys her nice things, he will pay off her debt, and he'll take good care of her, and in exchange she just needs to be at his beck and call, and so their relationship very much goes from there. So another 4-star read, and this one is 2.5 on the spice scale, and this was When Heroes Fall by Giana Darling, and this is book 1 in her Anti-Heroes in Love duet. And again, I read this for the Mafia Romance read along. In fact, I actually listened to this as an audiobook, and it was narrated by Rose Dioro and Jeremy York. This is an Italian mafia romance. It's an age gap, enemies to lovers, close proximity, and a grumpy sunshine, and definitely a hero that is very protective of our heroine with very much touch her and die vibes. We of course we're following Elena and Dante. Now the setup for this one is that Dante has been arrested and is on trial for a murder. Now, although he is in the mafia, he's head of the mafia, he hasn't actually committed this particular crime, and of course he's got quite an elite team of lawyers who are going to try and get him off the hook. But of course the local kind of law enforcement, the kind of judges, and the kind of DA really want to take him out. They know he's head of the mafia, they know he's not a good guy, and so they're desperate to pin something on him so that they can put him away. Now Elena actually happens to be a lawyer, and he specifically asks that she is part of his legal team to help him, because it also turns out that Elena is the sister of one of Dante's very, very close friends, and so the sister also tries to convince her to help Dante and be part of his legal team. Now, once she does in fact agree to do this, she is very, very skeptical. She very much believes that he's committed this crime. At least she very much knows that he's a bad person that's absolutely capable of committing this crime. But because of her sister and how much she loves her sister, she does agree to do this. Now, as time goes on, Dante finds a way to make sure that she ends up living with him in his house, because part of this trial, he is released on bail, but he does have to wear an ankle monitor, so can't leave his apartment, which is no hardship really, because he does live in a very large penthouse. But he forces Elena to actually move in with him because he wants his legal counsel with him at all times, and so now they're going to be in close proximity together. And of course, the more time she spends with Dante and the more she figures out what's going on with this particular crime and what they're trying to accuse him of, she starts to realise that maybe she has misjudged him and that things aren't quite what they seem. Now, this is part of a duet. I haven't actually read the second part of this duet, so my rating for this book may go up after I finished the other half. I didn't jump straight into reading the second one, not because I didn't enjoy this one, but because I had other things that I needed to read before I got to it. And also, while this does end on somewhat of a cliffhanger, it ends on a cliffhanger that I could absolutely live with, and this couple are in a relatively good place from a relationship perspective, if not from a physical, you know, where they actually are perspective. But I felt like I could leave them in a pretty good place for where they were as a couple. So still with 4-star reads, the next one is His Juliet by Emilia Rossi, and this is book 2 in her Empire of Royals series. This is another Italian mafia romance. It's an age gap. It's also a Romeo and Juliet retelling with an obsessed hero, a plus-size heroine, and definitely some PTSD trauma with a scarred heroine as well. We were following Romeo and Juliet because, yes, this was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but also the characters themselves were also called Romeo and Juliet. So this one starts out where we discover that our heroine, Juliet, owns a bookstore, or at least manages a bookstore, but we also know that she's had some bad trauma in her past, and as a result she is struggling mentally, and she also suffers from agoraphobia. So she has very limited places that she feels safe and will go. One of those places is her apartment, the other one is this bookstore. Now, this couple actually meet when one night she's doing kind of inventory, like a bit of a stock take in the bookstore, and our hero Romeo is trying to run away from someone who is chasing him, a very bad man called the Butcher, and he ends up kind of, you know, rattling doors, seeing what's unlocked, and eventually he gets into her bookshop. Now, of course, she is a little bit horrified that this strange man has broken in essentially to her bookstore, but he isn't going to let her call the police, and instead he's going to get her to agree to kind of hang out with him while he's waiting for the budget to disappear, and they end up kind of spending this very interesting night together where they're gonna share a pizza, they're gonna talk, they're gonna kind of play games, and eventually Romeo is gonna head on out. Now, Romeo and Juliet do form this relationship with each other, and Romeo really, really likes her, and they start texting each other and talking to each other on the phone. He doesn't see her very often physically because he doesn't want to put her in any danger. He definitely wants to keep her out of the mafia life, but they do start to form this relationship, and eventually they are going to see each other more, and their relationship is going to go from there. This story does have some sort of twists and turns and unexpected things that happen in the third act of this book, and we discover more about the Butcher, who he really is, and how all of these characters are connected. And so some unexpected things, shall we say, happen towards the end of this book. But again, overall, I really did enjoy this book from Emilia Rossi, and like I said, it's a 4-star read and 3 on the spy scale. Next up, I've got Disclaim by Pam Godwin. This is book 3 in her Deliver series, and this is very much kind of a series that focuses on human trafficking, sex trafficking, and trying to kind of uncover these sex trafficking rings and free the people that have been taken. What surprised me about this one though is that it actually ended up being a cartel romance. It was a captive, forced proximity, BDSM elements, second chance, stalker, and one of the characters was undercover, and we were following Camilla and Matthias. Camilla and Matthias knew each other when they were young. In fact, they were kind of teenage sweethearts. They were very much in love with each other and had plans to be together. But Matthias actually left Camilla when they were in their late teens. I don't know if he was actually 18, but they were around that sort of age, and Matthias just ups and leaves one day. Now, Camilla is quite heartbroken by this. She doesn't understand why he's kind of left or what secrets he's hiding, but things don't go well for Camilla either, because although she believes Matthias is going to come back after like 12 months, she's actually taken herself before he ever comes back, and she is captured by these people that place him like in sex trafficking, and she in fact is a person who is going to be trained by Van, and Van was a hero from book 2. Now, she does manage to escape, and after she escapes, she's kind of set up this vigilante group that specifically hunt down and track people who have taken other women and kind of bring down their sex trafficking rings and release them. She's on the case of this particular ring, and she just can't crack it. For several years now, they've been trying to figure out who is the head of the snake, as it were. She wants to cut the head of the snake off. How is she going to uncover it? And so she comes to the decision that the only way to figure out exactly what's going on is to go undercover, to get herself recaptured, taken to wherever this compound is, wherever this place is where these women get taken, and try and bring it down from the inside. And lo and behold, when she actually gets taken, she is in fact taken by her old boyfriend Matthias, and she discovers that he is in fact now head of a Colombian mafia, and he is one of the people that has been taking these women, and their relationship is then going to go from there. That's all I want to say about this particular book, because obviously with a Pam Godwin there is lots of twists and turns. It's a very complex and well thought out plot, and I wouldn't want to spoil it for you at all, but this one was a 4-star, and it was 4 on the spy scale. The next one I want to share with you is Twisted Proposal by Zoe Blake, and I actually got this one as an ARC. This is book 5 in her Ivanov crime family series, which is focused on the Bratva. It's an age gap, forced marriage, forced proximity, over the top hero, as all Zoe Blake's heroes are, and we were following Artem and Victoria. Now, I always love Zoe Blake's books. Her heroes, like I say, are completely over the top, a little bit unhinged, and they're so much fun to read. So this one was a 4-star. I was really tempted to rate this one higher because I enjoyed it so much, but settled at a 4-star, and it was also 4 on the spy scale as well. Now, at the start of this book, we meet Artem, and he has gone to do a deal with Victoria's father and brother. However, he's horrified that when he gets there, one of the things they want to bargain with him is in fact Victoria, and she is tied to a chair. She's clearly been beaten and mistreated by her brother and father, and Artem is really kind of enraged by this, and he obviously doesn't want to do any dealings with these 2 particular people, and of course he's not going to take Victoria as payment, except for the fact that he's going to unalive the father and the brother, rescue Victoria, but now he feels that he's responsible for her, and so he decides that he is going to take her under his protection. Now, at first he just intends to continue to pay for her college tuition, because she is going to college, and to look out for her, like put a bodyguard on her basically, check that everything is okay, and just let her go about her business. Except for the fact that she is going to be very defiant. She's got out of the clutches of her father and brother, and now she just wants to be free of the mafia world, and she's very, very angry with Artem that he just won't leave her alone. And so she's very, very defiant, doesn't really do what he says, deliberately makes trouble, and ends up going to this frat party where she's going to kind of get drunk and get herself into a bit of trouble. Now, of course, because there is a bodyguard on her, he does report back to Artem that she's got herself into a little bit of a mess, and so Artem leaves a very important business meeting, gets in his helicopter and lands in the back garden of this frat house and goes in all guns blazing to rescue his woman. And then he determines that she is cannot be trusted on her own, and he's going to have to move her into his house with him, where he's going to have to keep a much closer eye on her, and ultimately he's going to determine that he needs to marry her in order to keep her safe. So like I said, completely bonkers plot, over the top hero. Just love the whole helicopter scene where he kind of just lands and goes in, like I say, organs blazing, and really kind of like archetypical of a Zoe Blake hero, and it just had me smiling throughout. So 2 more 4-star reads before we get to a 4.5-star, and the next 2 are actually books in the Immortals After Dark series by Kresley Cole. The first one is Pleasure of a Dark Prince. This was book 9 in the Immortals After Dark. It's paranormal romance, close proximity, fated mates, and I would also say a bit of a road trip, although really it's a boat trip. And we were following Lucia the Huntress, who is a Valkyrie, and Gareth McCreeve, who is one of the Lycae, so he is a werewolf. Now Gareth is actually brother to Lachlan, who was the hero from book 1, and as this book starts, it kind of starts in the timeline before Lachlan escapes in the first book. So Gareth McGreeve is actually grieving for his brother, because since his brother has disappeared and he spent many years trying to find out where his brother went, he's had to kind of head up the Lycae family. So he's actually, you know, head of this Lycae family. But every year on the anniversary of his brother's disappearance, they kind of have this kind of gathering almost in memory of Lachlan, and Gareth is very much still grieving and still very much hoping that Lachlan is going to turn up at some point one day. Now while all this is going down, he happens to come into contact with our heroine, Lucia the Huntress, and realises that she is in fact his fated mate, and tries to go after her, but she doesn't want anything to do with him, and he eventually kind of lets her go, or at least she kind of escapes. Then in the sort of the timeline, then she kind of disappears. He vows to go after her, but this is all kind of mixed up in the timeline with when Lachlan kind of like returns, and that frees up Gareth then to literally go in hunt in earnest. Now Lucia the Huntress has got secrets of her own, because she has done a deal with a goddess in order to get some special powers as an archer, and she is on a mission to get a special weapon, a god destroyer basically, that will kill a very bad person. I think his name was Kruak, and every 500 years he rises from the kind of the prison that he's in, and Lucia has one chance to unalive him and put him back where he belongs. Now Gareth is obviously going to go after her. He wants to help her, but she's not going to tell him everything about what's going on, and he cannot understand for the life of him why she doesn't want to be with him, but there are reasons. I found this one really interesting. Like I say, I love the werewolves actually. All of the books with werewolves in them have been my favourites sort of so far, and what I liked about this one, like I said, they kind of go on a boat trip, because the weapon that she's sort of seeking is in the kind of the Amazon, in kind of like the mystical place of El Dorado. So they kind of go on this sort of boat trip down the Amazon, and there's other kind of paranormal sort of creatures that go along with them, and also Lothair is going to make an appearance in this one as well. And so kind of the events of this one really do play a part for some more stories as we go through the next couple of books as well. So moving straight on then to the next one, Demon from the Dark, which is book 10 in the Immortals After Dark series. Again, this was another captor. This one had a language barrier, but it was also survival story as well, with a tortured hero and forced proximity. In this one we're following Malcolm, who's actually a special kind of paranormal creature. He started his life as a demon, then was kind of poisoned by vampire blood, and is now kind of this vampiric demon, and so not many of them exist, and so he's very special indeed. But he currently resides in this kind of like demonic plague. I think it's called the Oblivion or something like that. What we kind of start to learn, and what we've learned in the last couple of books, is that immortals are going missing, and we don't know where they've gone. And some very key characters like Regan, the Radiant, Lothair himself, and some other characters have been taken, and they've kind of gone and they've just disappeared, and no one knows where they are. One of these people that has gone missing is a witch called Caro, and she is being held by these very bad people who are basically collecting special immortals. They're doing experiments on them, they're torturing them, and they are very much trying to bring down the immortals. They don't want them anymore on the earth, and they're trying to figure out a way to, you know, overpower them, as it were. Now, they've heard about Malcolm, that he's this very special kind of breed of paranormal creature, and they decide that they're going to send Caro to go and retrieve him. So they do Caro a deal where they basically send her through a portal and basically say that if she can convince Malcolm to come back through the portal with her after 1 week, they will actually free a young witch that they've also got captive. And we find out that this young witch happens to be the daughter of a very good friend of Caro's. This friend has passed away, and now Caro is the kind of the guardian for this child, and so effectively her mother. And so Caro, of course, is going to do anything that she can in order to save this little girl, and so does in fact agree to go and get Malcolm and bring him back. When she first gets into this land called Oblivion, it's very, very kind of like dark, very kind of like hellish sort of place. Malcolm is very, very isolated. Everyone is afraid of him. They're all trying to hunt him and bring him down as well. And when she first bumps into Malcolm, he is more animal than man, more animal than immortal, even more animal than his demonic self should be. And there's also a language barrier between them as well, because he doesn't speak kind of like the normal tongue, as it were. Anglish is what they call it. He only speaks demonish, and so there is a bit of language barrier between them as well to start off with. Of course, as they get closer together, they are going to realise they're fated mates. They are going to want to be together, but Caro is unable to explain to him exactly what's going to happen, and so she feels a lot of guilt for the fact that she's about to betray him and what he's going to do when he finds out. But nevertheless, he does follow her through the portal, and then we kind of then see what happens to this couple and to the other immortals as well that have been taken captive once they are through. And again, that's all I'm going to say about that one, because we're quite deep into this series now. As we go through, obviously more and more is going to be revealed. So then on to the first 4.5 star that I read in the month of May, and that was Jump on 3 by Julia Wolfe, and this is book 3 in her Savage Academy series. So this one is Friends to Lovers. We have a virgin heroine, and we also have a heroine who is a very special character indeed, because she is autistic. She also is a twin sister to Delilah, who was the heroine from book 2, and we were following Evelyn and Ivan. So in the second book in this series, we'd seen that Delilah, Evelyn's sister, had actually had a bit of a crush on Ivan, but Ivan just wanted to be her friend, and in the end Delilah obviously finds romance with somebody else, and she's now very happy. However, Evelyn is very, very loyal towards her sister, and when Ivan starts showing a bit of interest in her, and she does like Ivan in return, she doesn't want to betray her sister, and so one of the reasons she doesn't want to be with him is she doesn't want to upset her sister in any way. And of course her sister is like, don't be crazy. But equally, Ivan is a bit upset by this, because he's like, she's never going to get past the fact that her sister used to like me and that I rejected her sister, and I don't think anything can come of it. Now, they do have a cute relationship with each other though. There's quite a few things that they have in common. So one of them is that they are both on the swim team, and so they kind of train together in the mornings in the kind of swimming pool, and also are kind of sit next to each other on the coach to and from meets and things like that. Plus Evelyn starts to learn how to speak Russian, because Ivan is actually a Russian hero in this story, so I thought that was particularly cute as well. And also they share a love of music as well. They both like a particular type of music, and so will share playlists with each other. Now, as I mentioned at the start, Evelyn is autistic, and she has some very particular things that she likes to do and the way she likes to study, and she will listen to this music, but when she's studying, she likes to be in a quiet room by herself with no distractions, and she's found the perfect room in the library, and that is until Ivan is desperate for a place to go. He comes across this room, he happens to get it before her, and then they kind of enter into this bit of a war where she tries to get to the room before him and vice versa. The thing is, to start off with, she doesn't know that this is Ivan who is doing this. She just knows that there's a boy in this room that is taking her special place away from her, and so she starts to leave him little notes. In the end, he gives her his phone number, and then they start to exchange text messages, and so he kind of plays really cute pranks on her, kind of to try and get her attention, and eventually she's going to figure out that this person is in fact Ivan, and so they kind of work this out as well. So there's lots of cute little moments in this book between this couple. I really did love them. There's also an edge of danger in this one as well, because Ivan, like I said, is Russian. His father is very demanding. He owns a club nearby, and Ivan has to go there and kind of work there in the evenings. And so there's an element here as well where Evelyn is really trying to find out where Ivan is going at night, and so she enlists the help of a local taxi driver who is also a very kind of an eccentric sort of lady, who will help her go and track Ivan down and see what's going on in this club. And you know, Evelyn also puts herself in quite a bit of danger, and Ivan is then obviously shows his protective side. So lots and lots of layers to this story. I really enjoyed it. Really love this couple, and I love everything by Julia Wolfe. So gave this one 4.5 stars, rounded it up to 5 on Goodreads. Another 4.5 star, almost a 5-star read was The Beast Takes a Bride by Julie Ann Long, and this was a recommendation from Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. It was one of her favourites from 2024, and it's in my TBR jar for my equivalent of 12 recs from 12 friends, but they're 12 recs from 12 booktubers that I like to watch, and she recommended this one. Now, normally I don't like historical romance as much as some of the other types of books that I like to read, but I always like to give historicals a go here and there, and so I was so pleased to pick up this one because I absolutely loved it. Now, this particular one is book 8 in the Palace of the Rogues series, and I haven't read anything by this author before or anything else in this series, but I don't think that took away from the story at all. We do meet quite a few other characters that clearly had romances in the past, but I don't feel like I was missing out on anything, and absolutely could keep up with what was going on in this particular story, because this particular story was the romance between Alexandra and Magnus. There's an age gap between these two, an arranged marriage. It's a marriage in trouble. It's also a fairy tale retelling. So as you can probably glean from the title of the book, The Beast Takes a Bride, this was a very loose Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I absolutely loved. And there was a bit of a time jump in this one as well, because at the start of this book, we actually get a scenario where Alexandra is currently in prison. She's in a holding cell because her and her cousin stole a carriage to go to a party. She has been taken by the police, and now she's been held in this kind of cell in the local police station. She is married at this point. She's been married to Magnus for about 5 years, but they are estranged. They don't see each other. So she's very shocked when Magnus himself turns up to kind of bail her out of prison, and he is very angry with her that she would get herself into this situation, because obviously it looks bad on him. And then we figure out exactly what's going on with this couple, and we kind of go back in the past to a bit of a time jump to find out exactly what happened, how they got married in the first place, and why they've ended up in the situation they are now in. Because we find out that Magnus is kind of a military hero. He isn't actually noble by birth, but he is so well decorated in the sort of armed forces that he is on track to be kind of like knighted, so he'll get his own lordship. Now, he goes to this particular kind of like summer party where Alexandra is, and actually it's her father that's hosting this party. He sees Alexandra, falls in love with her, and decides that he is going to marry her. Now, he doesn't believe that someone like her will willingly want to marry him, because he is older than her, and also he is scarred. He's got some war injuries, so he's scarred. But very much believes that if he can get Alexandra to marry him, then she will eventually learn to love him, and he'll get the life that he absolutely wants. So he basically propositions the father, asks for Alexandra's hand in marriage, and in return he's going to give her father some very much needed money, because the father is in debt financially. And so the father kind of agrees to hand his daughter over to Magnus. Now, Alexandra obviously really loves her father, doesn't want them to suffer financially, and does agree to marry Magnus. So she's not kind of like coerced into this particularly. She kind of goes along with it willingly. However, what no one else realises is that Alexandra actually has a kind of a boyfriend, someone that she's kind of been seeing and that she believes to be in love with. She knows it can't last. They are definitely going to go their separate ways. But after they are married, before they can consummate their marriage, she meets her kind of boyfriend, and they have a kiss. And of course Magnus is going to see this and is then going to feel absolutely betrayed by his new wife, and as a result they're then going to be estranged for the next 5 years. So he goes off to do other military things, he kind of goes abroad, and he does obviously leave her with cash and a way to look after herself in the city. Very much expects her to, you know, be an upstanding member of the community, not to make a fool out of him, but very much is separated from her, until of course now he's back in London, and now we're in a situation where he's just rescued her from prison. Now he kind of does her a deal and says, look, I'm about to be made a lord, I really don't want a bad reputation to sully that or to prevent this from happening, and so let's agree that we are going to kind of reside together for the next couple of weeks. We're going to show ourselves at social functions, we're going to pretend that we're very happily married, make sure that I get my that I'm knighted basically, and then after that I will send you off to America where you can start your own life. We're not going to get divorced, but we'll be permanently separated. And at first she agrees to this, but of course as they spend some time together over the course of the next couple of weeks, they are very much going to start to develop feelings for each other once again and kind of get a second chance at this marriage. Now this is called the Palace of Rogues because they don't end up staying in one of their houses, they end up staying in this like boarding house, like this hotel if you like, and in this hotel there's some very, very interesting characters, and like I say, we see lots of characters that have clearly been in other books in this series, and so it was a really, really kind of delightful read. I love the romance between these two, you could really feel the connection and also the chemistry between this couple, and I loved the way this book ended as well. So had all of the elements that I really, really enjoy, and like I say, I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars, rounded up to 5 on Goodreads, and it was 3 on the Spice scale as well. So I'm left with 2 5-star reads, and it was a really tough call to decide between these two books which one was my favourite of the month, and they're pretty much on par with one another, but they are 2 very different books. And the first one is Born for Lace by Nikki Harris. This is book 2 in the Cradled Common series, which is kind of a dark dystopian romance series. We're dealing with an earth that is 1,000 years older than the one we're living on, and lots of things have happened, climate change and various other things, and society is very different from the one that we know. And our hero in this one, Lagos, is actually a modified hero. He's a modified human. He has been genetically engineered to be bigger, faster, stronger than a regular human being. And our heroine in this one, Dahlia, is what they call a lace girl. In this world, it's quite difficult to describe, but in this world, in the Cradle Common, there are kind of 2 different classes, if you like. You've got the crown, which is made up of the kind of the ruling classes and these modified humans who kind of pretty much rule everything, and then you have the trade, and the trade is made up of regular kind of humans who have been assigned tasks, roles in this society, and the idea is that you are born into a trade, you do complete that trade in return for you know, the crown kind of protecting you. There's also, of course, civilizations or groups of humans that have refused to be part of this community. So they kind of live in this kind of like wild sort of deserty sort of place, and they're scrapping to make ends meet. And there are also some genetically modified humans there where the experiments didn't go quite so well. And they are kind of like mutations, if you like, not particularly nice ones, and people are very scared of these types of humans. So we've kind of got this set up now. Like I say, Dahlia is a lace girl, so she's in a trade, and her trade is to be a lace girl, and that basically means that she is there to be a comfort to a man. She gets assigned to a man and she's there to be his comfort, i.e. his beck and call girl, but she is also to remain pure and innocent. And so what actually they do is she drinks a herbal tea which puts her to sleep in the evenings, and so the person that she is with can do whatever he wants to her while she's asleep, and she doesn't have any memories of this, and it keeps her pure, like I say, and innocent, but also completely comforts and satisfies the man that she is with, and kind of that's her trade. Now at the start of this book, she has a friend who is also a lace girl who was gotten pregnant by a Jindi, one of these modified humans, and she's about to give birth to this child, and she's going to die in childbirth because her body isn't sort of equipped in order to give birth to kind of this modified child. And so she makes Dahlia promise to get her child to safety, and in fact she's got it set up so Lagos and his friend are going to kind of rendezvous with her and take her to safety. Now, of course, they think they're going to intercept the mother and child, and at first don't realise that Dahlia isn't the mother of this child, and so they're not 100% pleased to be taking her with them, but they definitely want to take the child to safety, and so they end up going together. And so then they start this perilous journey where they're going to have to try and get this person to safety, and they're trying to take her to this human community which is far away from the trade in the crown and everything else that goes on in this desert wasteland, and it's kind of like an oasis, if you like, a really nice kind of like paradise-like community where they can go and be safe. And of course, on their journey as they go, they're going to be in survival mode. There's going to be a lot of things that go on, but ultimately Lagos and Dahlia are going to form a relationship and ultimately fall in love with each other as they journey, and then they're going to have to make some difficult decisions when it's time for them to leave her there, because this is a place where Lagos as a modified human cannot go. And so how are they going to be able to continue their relationship once they are finally there and she's finally safe? So I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I really liked the first book in this series, Born for Silk, but I think this one slightly edged it out. And I know that's probably an unpopular opinion because I think some people prefer the first book over this one, but I just really liked the angst between this couple, the pining between this couple, and part of what happens towards the end of this book is absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. And I felt so much for this couple and was, you know, trying to figure out how they were going to be together, and very intrigued to see where Nikki Harris takes this series next. Okay, so the final book and the last 5-star book that I've got to share with you is Be With Me by Gabrielle Sands. This is book 1 in her new mafia series, House of Ferrero, and this is an Italian mafia romance series. I got this one as an ARC, rated it 5 stars like I said, and it was 3.5 on the Spy scale, and we were following Romolo and Mia. Now this is another Romeo and Juliet style retelling very loosely, and it also features a damaged hero, enemies to lovers, and an obsessed hero. Romolo is a very complex character, and we realise that he's been through quite a lot of trauma in his past, and that's shaped who he is today. So he comes across as quite cold and unfeeling. He's definitely built up walls around his heart. He doesn't really want to show any kind of emotion, and he's kind of very much been trained to be like that by his family, by his mother in particular. His role in the family, he's the youngest Ferrero brother, but his role in this mafia family is to kind of learn everyone's secrets. He is very much a secret keeper, he's very much a charmer, very much a ladies' man, and he can find out secrets on people, dig up their dirt, and they use that information to kind of blackmail people, and that's kind of his job. And if he has to do that by seducing a woman, then that's exactly what he'll do. Enter Mia then, and Mia is actually friends in a friendship group, and each one of her friends is going to end up with someone from the Ferrero family, I'm pretty sure. But Mia is also the daughter of a mayor, a politician, and he is trying to get a position in the White House, so he's quite a powerful man. He is also very anti, obviously, the mafia, this criminal family, very anti the Ferrero family, and he's trying to bring them down. So the Ferreros really want to find a secret about this guy so that they can blackmail him and make sure that he isn't able to bring their organisation down. So of course Romolo's job is going to be to seduce Mia to see if they can dig up any dirt on this family and use it against the father. However, they actually end up having a meet cute before they get really into this plot, because Mia hasn't heard from her friend in a while. They've recently come back from school. They all went to a school, I believe, was it in Switzerland together. They're really good friends, really close, and she hasn't heard from her friend in a couple of weeks now that they're all back in New York, and she seems very much that she's putting her off, and she hears that she's actually engaged to be married to a man called Cosimo, who is one of the Ferreros, and she's not invited to this engagement party, and so she decides that she's going to go to this party uninvited to kind of confront her friend and figure out what's going on. And it's when she gets there that she realises that that Cosimo is part of the mafia, and not only that, her friend has been lying to her about who she is, because she is also a member of a mafia family. And the reason she didn't tell Mia is because obviously she wanted to keep this private and confidential. She didn't want her friend to think badly of her because she was part of a mafia family, and also she was trying to keep her safe. But of course now she is in this mafia family's home, and not only that, it's the Ferrero's home, and you know, her father, who is, like I said, the mayor, he is you know, their arch enemy, and so she's going to be in quite a difficult position if anyone finds her in this house. So her friend basically says, hide in this bedroom, I'll call a taxi, as soon as the taxi's here I'll come and get you, and we'll get you out before anyone sees you. And of course, while she's waiting in the bedroom, who should come in but Romolo with another woman, and she's witness to a few things that go down in this bedroom. And then eventually Romolo figures out that she's there, and she's kind of like been spying on him, or so he thinks, and that is their first interaction. So overall, I really like this one. I've loved everything that Gabrielle Sanz has written. I think this is a really promising start to a new series. I really love this couple. I thought their connection was fantastic, their chemistry was great as well, and their backstories were, you know, heartbreaking. But the way that they kind of overcame it, some of the things that happened in this story, really setting up, like I say, this sort of backstory, this plot for what's going to go on in the rest of the series, I really enjoyed. And so rated this one 5 stars, and looking forward to reading more. So there we go, that's all the books that I read in the month of May, ranked in order from my least favourite to my most favourite stories. Like I said, if you like the fact that I rank this rather than talking about these books in chronological order, then please let me know in the comments box down below, and I'll do it again for my June reading wrap up. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and all that's left for me to do then is say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, right. Jesus. Alright, someone's trying to kill me. This one was actually a Cosa Nostra. Cosa Nostra. Just end it actually. You don't need to carry on about that. So just end it with, and then the next morning they realise they're together. Blah, blah, blah.